Today, let's destroy the Dutch defense in 14 moves.
This is one of the most beautiful games I've played in my life. I'm very proud of this one, and it was also a crucial game for me to win the tournament I was participating in. I opened with d4, and my opponent plays the Dutch defense. It's the first opening where you already weaken the f7 square of your king. It is a bit of a shady opening, not my favorite, but as the white side I have a good repertoire against it, so I like to play against it. But I would not advise you to play the Dutch defense and start with opening the d or the e pawn instead. And my repertoire is bishop g5, and this is pretty much against all ideas black has in the system, because this is the setup black wants to achieve. For example, if we go like this, it castles and already has some stronghold on these squares. With the f-pawn, the king is safe and all good. But that's not what I'm going to allow the black player to do. With bishop g5, if you would play your knight here, you can simply trade it off and you have a beautiful center with your pawn, and you can play c4, for example, in this position. So instead, my opponent played g6. And note that h6 would be a very logical reply, and you might think you have to go back already, but there is some trick in this line. If you go here and my opponent decides to play g5, then I can play e3. And if my opponent takes here, this is actually a checkmate, because the king cannot escape. So, for example, if black plays knight f6 to cover this square, then we go here and our bishop is beautifully placed. And black's pawns on the king side have already progressed a lot, and at some point we can target those with h4. So, but that's not what my opponent did. Played g6, that's a fine move. Knight c3, so here we would not go for the Queen's Gambit setup with the pawn on c4, because in this position we often want to castle long and attack with our h-pawn. Bishop g7, we simply move our pawn to e3 and make room for a bishop to develop. d6, you see how many pawn moves you already made and still have to develop the pieces. Bishop to c4, this makes it already a bit hard for black to castle at some point. So my opponent plays c6, another very slow move, probably with the idea to block my bishop at some point. h4, not the best move according to the computer, but I like it. Going on the offense and already going for the weak squares in black's position. d5, now my bishop needs to move. The computer would have liked bishop b3. Staying on this diagonal, I chose to go back to d3, and what is very common in these lines, go for f3 and e4 at some point to battle against the strong grip of the black pawns on the e4 square. Black played queen b6, attacking the weak b2 pawn, and here the computer would have liked knight f3, sacrificing this pawn. I had a similar idea in mind, but then with the queen, going to d2, and I wanted to castle long. But here, according to the computer, taking on the b2 is actually the best move, after rook b1, and queen a3, the computer says nothing much is going on actually, and black is fine. I think practically h5 coming up, pressure on the b7 square, this bishop cannot really move, this queen out of the game. I think practically this is a good position for white. Instead, black played e5, and I decided to capture it. No way that I would allow it to advance. And here the computer would have liked black to capture on b2 and get a similar position like we had before, something like this. But my opponent decided to take on e5 with the bishop. See how both knights and the bishop are still underdeveloped and the king is still in the middle of the board, and I decide to castle my king, and only my knight has to be developed yet. I think this is a super strong position for white, and black is already on the defense. Queen a5, another queen move. See how the move went from d8 to b6 to a5, losing a lot of tempo. I simply develop my knight to the e2 square. See how beautiful everything is connected. The knights are connected, so if you would take, I would simply take back with my knight. And now my opponent makes a crucial mistake and plays the move b5. Do you see the best move in this position? It's a brilliant move on move 12.
I'm Mr. X, and together with my assistant Barry,
Well, hi.
we will take you through your journey to become a better chess player. From beginner to expert level, we're here to assist you. Keep on watching and make sure to subscribe.
I simply take the pawn. Why? Well, if you would take it with the queen, we of course simply take the queen. And if you would take it with the pawn, then loose pieces drop off. Do you see the loose pieces? The bishop is loose, not defended by any piece. The rook is loose, not defended by any piece. So we would take here. And both the rook and the bishop are attacked. And black cannot defend both. And note that we can take this bishop even with a check and also collect this rook, which is also undefended then if this bishop falls. So the best move in this position would have been king to f7, and then I should have retreated my bishop to the a4 square, remaining to be active. And I think this is still a super strong position. The king already not castled on the weak f7 square. The knight's not developed, this bishop is not developed. The queen is on the side of the board and white is doing very well. Instead, my opponent plays bishop to a6, which is a mistake. Do you see another brilliant move in my opinion? Yes, queen takes on d5. Why is this so amazing? Well, this pawn is simply pinned, cannot take back. If we would take the bishop here, then we win this bishop and also this rook. And if you would take with the queen, note, this pawn is not being pinned anymore. So if we would take here, then black can take here. So that would not be the right move. Instead, we would give an intermediate check. King has to go to f8, and now we can take the queen. Now my opponent took on the c3 square. Well, there's multiple moves. The computer likes to just take back, but I gave a check here. If you take back with a knight, check. And the rook hangs, but my opponent simply decided to resign. Probably you would have to go to f8. And then, for example, I can simply take your bishop. And in the end, the rook is still undefended in the corner. Instead, the computer likes this check and then taking the bishop. And in this position, not even taking the rook, just letting it alone because it's out of the game and attack and simply win the game in a few more moves. I love this game. I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe. We're out of here. Bye.